Hey everybody, welcome back. It's Business and covering the work in progress French destroyers. You can expect these in an upcoming update. I forgot which one. I think it's 8.6. Hopefully it's not 8.6 at all. I think these ships need a lot of work. And yeah, I guess I'll be going over that as we go through the video. I should try to break this up into the low, mid, and high tiers, so tiers 2, 3, and 4, and there's also the Soroka that we're covering, so there's 2 tier 5s, tier 6 and tier 7, and then the high tier at 8 and 9. So the Kleber is nowhere to be found. I think the Super Testers have had it again, but the CCs have not, so I can't comment on anything to do with that. The fact that they haven't put it back into testing for the CCs is kind of indicative that they're just going to do whatever they're going to do with it, and I think that's kind of frustrating because, like I said, I think this line needs a lot of work. And what you see here is certainly one of the more common situations, but what's very uncommon is that I actually got out of this relatively unscathed. I was able to extricate myself from this awful situation dealing with the secondaries and obviously being focused by the carrier. This did not happen with any frequency. I think this is only one of 2 times that I was able to do something like this. And against, if somebody's coming after you with rockets, you're fucking dead. There's no other way to put it. You have no way to break line of sight. You have no AA defense, not by comparison to even other DDs at the tier and stuff. It's bad, but we'll get to that, of course, as we go. But in just keeping with the fact that I'm going to keep this streamlined a bit, I'm just throwing these stats up for each of these ships so that you can see, what the basic stuff is. So feel free to pause, take a look at what the general stats are, because I do expect some of this stuff to change, which is why I'm only putting certain things up. The main battery stats, as well as the torpedo stats, concealment with concealment expert and camo, and the speed with the flag. So the reason I'm doing that, well, it's basically because I expect other stats to change, not so much these stats. Maybe a little bit here and there on some reload or that sort of thing. I don't expect turret traverse to be improved at all, which is really shitty because, God, mainly I think 18 seconds is like the absolute upper limit, the maximum for what can be called a gunboat, because 18 seconds is god awful when you have such a heavy focus on your guns and being able to try to inflict damage and stuff, and especially because you don't have smoke and you don't have high really good concealment. It seems really weird to say like high concealment, but you know what I mean with that. But we've got tiers 2 and 3, 100mm shells. Then we go up to tier 4, and both 5s have 130mm shells. Tier 6, you start with the 139mm shells, and that's really where these shells come into play, come into their own, I should say, where they have really solid pen as far as the AP is concerned, and you can do some pretty respectable damage with the HE, but it's still, there seems to be something lacking with the HE and the overall rate of fire with these ships, mainly because at tier 6 on up you get main battery reload booster, so of course the ships are designed to be quote-unquote balanced around that, and I think that's a huge mistake. All in all, when it comes to, I really don't want to complain too much about main battery reload booster. It's effectively, how to put this, it's Wargaming has backed themselves into a corner by having all these consumables define the traits of new ships, and there's no real, when you look at the French cruisers, they were fine without main battery reload booster. Why would we need to increase their reload and give them main battery reload booster instead of just not doing that particular consumable and dropping their reload by a half second, 3/4 of a second, whatever it is, to kind of up their overall damage? I have no idea why that's such a problem, as opposed to, well, we have to give them some ridiculous consumable, blah blah blah. It just doesn't work, in my opinion. I think it completely screws the game balance, and I'm not a fan. I'm probably less a fan of main battery reload booster than I am 12 km Moscow radar. You know, I think it's absolutely absurd. But the as far as the low tier play is concerned, I really like these ships at the low tier. This is very much like the German line, where the V25, G101, V170 are a lot of fun to play, and these are fun to play. Except when you start thinking about how people are going to respond to these ships, because they can't pop smoke. Like, this is not a choice. This is not like torpedo reload booster. This isn't like what is it? Heal, or like a healing party or something, right? You you don't have a choice. You are stuck with simply having these guns and, you know, this lack of ability to break line of sight. So if the match depends on you doing something that you would otherwise be able to do if you had smoke, if you'd be able to sit there for a second and gun this guy down, or set up a torp ambush without getting spotted by you know, the spotter plane or fighter planes or something like that, well, you're screwed, because you can't do any of that. This is a really, really harsh entry for players. Like, if somebody's like, oh yeah, let's try out these French destroyers, they're gonna fucking hate it. Like, you know, like, this is not a ship line that is for the faint of heart. It's I don't even really know where to go with this, because I honestly don't understand what they're trying to do with these ships, but they don't feel like really all that strong in the gunboat category. They're great as ambushers, I'll say that much. I haven't had this much fun, like, you know, doing ambushing and stuff like that since, geez, the Dursky, and, you know, as far as like the new lines, or obviously the German destroyers. I just feel like there's going to be this kind of blowback right off the bat with these lower tier ships, because people are like, they're losing games that they would otherwise win if they simply had a way to conceal themselves, or just not even that, just to break line of sight. And that's the really frustrating part to me, is I'm expecting the frustration from other people as well. And yeah, nice ram mechanics there, 1300 damage. Okay. Yeah. But we ended up getting him anyway, so that worked out. But no, I think the best ship of the line is actually going to be this, the tier 4. So this has a significantly increased amount of penetration compared to literally every single other destroyer at this tier, other than just one, and that's the Wakeful. The Wakeful, let's put it into perspective. The Wakeful at around I think it's just under 7 kilometers, can citadel the Minotaur, because it's able to hit over 100 millimeters of pen at nearly 7 kilometers, which is absolutely nuts for a tier 4 destroyer. And the Barask has it's significantly lower than that. I think it's around, I want to say about 5.5 kilometers. It's able to pen over 100 millimeters, and then all the other DDs are well below that. So those two are the kings of AP pen, and you know, that's going to generate some different opportunities. The benefit that this has over some ship like the Wakeful is that it has a much faster reload, or actually, maybe it doesn't. I completely forget. I haven't played the Wakeful in forever, but I remember the Wakeful having a pretty damn slow reload, which is what seemed like it, you know, kind of limited the ability that it would have against light-skinned cruisers that, you know, were just they're just coming around broadside, and you've got that one shot to be able to throw at them. Chances are, the longer the reload, of course, the more likely you are to lose that window of opportunity, and especially because these shells are so small, it's a lot more difficult to make sure that you get the right shot when you need it. So in that regard, though, again, the Barask I think is really serviceable when it comes to the AP and the HE. You could definitely work people down, but it's going to be hard unless you can find somebody else's smoke to jump into, because I generally would say that you're relegated to doing ambushes or, you know, suicidal torp runs in order to get any real significant damage out of these ships. And I really wish I didn't miss that previous salvo, but whatever. So anyhow, I feel like the tier 4 is going to get kind of thrown back a little bit on its heels by having, instead of 9mm torps, get the same 7mm torps, 57 knot speed as the tier 5 Sirocco, which the tier 5 Sirocco is the tier 4 Barask. It just has main battery reload booster and the 7mm torps. So the tier 5 Jaguar, if you take a look at the bottom left, take note of that health, because holy shit, this has so much more health than any other ship at this tier. It's amazing. And I think the next highest is like 12.8 or 13.1 or something like that. But this has almost 17,000 health. And I guess that's intended. But, I mean, given how it takes damage, especially from like rocket attacks, or obviously if they can land some bombs on you with you know, the carriers, then yeah, you're one way or another you're going to take a ton of damage. But, you know, generally the thing about this is that what I was doing there is really what any other destroyer could do as well. It's not something that's unique, so kind of weird to me, but I'm not sure if we've kind of run the course with destroyers, because aside from the French destroyers, the next line, what you could assume would be the Italian destroyer line, and then it's all whoever the hell they can come up with. But I guess the Friesland is the most interesting experiment they've done with destroyers, because, you know, removing the torps makes for a very different gameplay experience. And when it comes to these French destroyers, I just don't think they're different at all. They suck to play when there's carriers involved, and they're alright to play otherwise. I've definitely had some really, like I said, some really good matches in this particular ship, especially the Sirocco, but a lot of that can be chalked up to a bunch of different things, of course, you know, as far as the overall skill level of the players that I'm going up against and that sort of thing. You know, you get one or two good players on the enemy team, and yeah, they're gonna crap all over you, especially if one of them's a carrier. And I've had the worst experience probably going up against carriers in this ship, because every time I've had a situation where I've like, oh, okay, this is a good matchup, and then I see a carrier there, and it's like, holy shit, every time I get focused by the carrier when I'm in the tier 6. And on this map, actually, in a Shikaku had attacked me, and I lost 1/3 of my health to a single rocket attack from a Shikaku, and I was going at full tilt and everything. I mean, the thing is, speed is life, yes, but you have no possible way to counteract, or like, there's zero counterplay to rockets. It's just, there's nothing you can do about it, and that's really shitty. And again, I think that people are going to learn pretty quickly right off the bat if the French destroyers are going to be worthwhile to them at all. And I think by the time they get to this tier, you know, depending on the amount of carrier games that they end up in, I think a lot of people are just going to be like, you know what, nah, this isn't for me. So I was really disappointed at these salvos too. Given that these are 139mm shells, I was really expecting to be able to get, you know, some more consistent damage there. And granted, what I got wasn't bad at all, but it's certainly less than what I was hoping for. And regarding the AP pen, that's something that you can definitely mess around with quite a bit on these ships, because like at tier 4, for instance, you get a nice boost with the AP from the 130mm shells on the Barask, and because of that, you know, basically everything at that tier is below the Wakeful. The Wakeful has shockingly good AP, which can Citadel a Minotaur at like 7km, which is to say it can penetrate 100mm of armor, and that's amazing for a destroyer at that tier. That's literally like tier 8-9 AP shell pen, but at tier 4, and it's a little, I still think that that's a mistake somehow. I brought that up multiple times, never got a reply back about that, so whatever. The Barask is less than that. I think its drop off is like 5.4km, but it does have 100mm of pen out to around 5km at the very least, and then all the other ships are like 2km, 2.5 at that tier. At tier, let's see, And those values, of course, will be the same for the tier 5 ships as well, so because they're the same shells. But when you get to the tier 6 and 7 with the 139s, they have a bit more than that, and then the tier 8 and 9s actually have significantly more than those. So actually maybe not significantly, but I would definitely recommend, if you're interested in playing these, make sure to try to use AP when and where you can, because it will yield results even against the thicker armor of a battleship. And of course, I'm not saying on the belt, but the upper belt where the deck meets the top of the side there, that is a crucial area for lower caliber guns to be able to yield damage. And that's true for, 203 millimeter or 152. You get in that situation, that's what's going to yield actual pen damage, and that's what you want, because you're going to be able to just really just shit all over a battleship pretty quickly with the AP of any given ship, if you're aiming in the right spot for it, of course. So again, these are 139 millimeter shells, and I'm getting pretty solid, respectable damage from them. But that's kind of the thing with these ships, is that in the high tier, I'm much more impressed with the AP performance than I am the HE performance. The lower tiers, it feels like the HE does a better job. And, I've tried it with IFHE, Demolition Expert, without either of those, without, like, the combination of both of them together. It just, I've never really, I had a few situations where I was able to light multiple fires right after somebody went on cooldown, but more often than not really. It just, I feel like the fire chance with these ships, it's good on paper, but the actual reality of it is that I just think that the other ships at the tiers are more reliable at setting those fires. But there's a lot of reasons for that, though. There's a lot of things that can be associated with lower fire chance, like if you're just unlucky being able to only target people that are just coming off a cooldown or that sort of thing, or using their DCP that are overly saturated, or whatever the case is. There's plenty of things that play into fire chance, and some of it's just, actually most of it is just luck. So regardless, the Mogador here is finally a nice step up, because you get to have double barrel turrets, and this is actually far more important than you would initially think, because what I haven't really talked about with these ships is one of my biggest problems with them, and that's the rear turret angles. Holy shit, they're bad. So these are large ships, right? They're long. They tend to have the turrets towards the rear, like much further back towards the rear. So generally there's a lot of superstructure items and things like that back there too. So what that usually means for ships that are in that position is that when you're engaging somebody, if you want to get all your guns on them, you got to bring more of your ship around to the side and expose more of it. And that's part of the reason I'm assuming that they have such solid health pools once you get to tier 5 on up, is because you're going to have to expose your side if you want to get any type of real damage done to an enemy ship. Because at least with the Mogador, you're able to throw 4 shells, and you have the main battery reload booster, so you can kind of pretend like you're broadside, even though you're just, bow forward. But with the other ships, with your single barrel turrets and stuff, and I want you to take a look at the clock here, and the well, not necessarily the clock, the score though. 987, 994, and we're on it. And the only reason this match didn't end is because the goddamn speed of this ship. Wow. So, and it gets more interesting from here, but anyways, no, the rear turret angles are really bad, but it dictates too much about how you play, because you only get 1 or 2 shells from the other ships when you're going in after somebody trying to push them off a cap. And yeah, of course, if it's tier 6 or up, you get main battery reload booster, so again, you get to kind of make up for some of that lost DPS that you would otherwise be able to do if you just went broadside. But a lot of these fights are way closer than you would expect them to be, simply because of the fact that you are so limited by your turret angles to be able to get them on a target without exposing the rest of your ship. And it's a brutal fight sometimes, going in against the target where you've got like 9,000 more health than them, but you end up with you know, you end up killing it, but you're on a sliver of your health too, because if you want to kill him quickly, either A, you have to use main battery reload booster, or B, you gotta go broadside, and that's pretty shitty. I don't like that trade-off at all. But the Mogador, though, this is, I think, my most played of the French destroyers, and I don't think I tested this the first time around, or if I did, I didn't really care for it when we had the Kleber initially. And you know, if the tier 4 is my favorite ship of the line, this would be the second one, but we still have an issue with air detection. We still have an issue with trying to break line of sight, you know, AA defense, and my suggestion would be something like the Royal Navy smoke, but half the action time of it, well, the duration. So instead of 40 seconds, it's 20 seconds, but the action time, like where it's actually dispersed in the smoke, is like 15 seconds to account for the much higher rate of speed of these ships. And just something to break line of sight, only give 1 charge, and you know, so 2 premium, 3 with superintendent, and reduce the main battery reload booster charges by 1. And it's not going to be enough duration for them to sit there and make something happen by sitting and smoking, gunning something down. It's just enough to hopefully break line of sight and give these ships an option in the late game, because really they have very, very little way to influence the impact of a game without just dumping their torps in an ambush, or firing away with their guns, probably in open water, and that's pretty shitty. But overall, I can't recommend these ships to anybody. I think that they are in need of a lot of work, and I think Wargaming is pretty much putting themselves in the corner and forcing themselves to address this at some later date as opposed to dealing with it now, and I don't think that's the right thing to do. So my assessment of the French destroyer line,
it stinks.
But yeah, that'll be it, and thanks for watching today. Look forward to the comments below, and I will see you back here next time, everybody. Take care.